you? How are you? Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser, and I am the duly elected mayor of the District of Columbia. And we know that the residents of the District of Columbia spoke loud and clear last November 4th when they adopted Initiative 71 to legalize small amounts of marijuana in Washington, D.C. And our government is prepared to implement and enforce Initiative 71 in the District of Columbia. In keeping with the opinions of our Attorney General, we believe, of course, that 71 was enacted on December the 5th when our Board of Elections approved the initiative. And we have been working to make sure that we clarify and inform our agencies and the residents of the District of Columbia what that means. Let me repeat again, as I did yesterday, what Initiative 71 allows. It allows for the home use and home growth of marijuana. It does not allow for the sale of marijuana, the use or consumption of marijuana in public spaces, and the use of marijuana by juveniles. That means people under the age of 21 is illegal. While use by adults will be legal under these limited circumstances, we continue to recognize that marijuana is a controlled substance that should be used safely and responsibly by adults. And all of the agencies of our government have been tasked with making sure that they understand what the rules are and how it affects their operations, and have made recommendations to me. I am pleased to be joined here by the members of the council and our Attorney General. The council, of course, has spoken up loud and clear along with the residents of the District of Columbia, and our Attorney General has collaborated with both branches throughout this process. And I would like to turn to Chairman Mendelson to speak for the council.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. The reason why we are all standing here together is because we take very seriously this issue and the questions that have been put forward, but we also are of the same view, which, as Mayor Bowser said, that the initiative was enacted at the point that the voters voted and the board certified the results. There have been some questions about whether the government should have responded differently. And since the handling of legislation falls to the legislative branch, I want to make these points. First of all, I sent the initiative to Congress for the required congressional review as required by law. This was not a matter that I had a choice about. The legal opinions that I have from our Attorney General, from our General Counsel, and from others are consistent that the legislation was enacted, and therefore I had no choice but to send it to the Hill, which is what I have done. The Council tracks the legislative review days, and the 30 days are up. Or will be up very shortly, and we have no choice but to track those days. That's what we do, and we don't have any discretion to choose with regard to this initiative, with regard to opposition by or objection by some members of Congress, to choose not to track the legislative days. And similarly, as the chairman of the council, the legislative branch determines when the 30 days have expired that legislation has become law, and there will be a notice that I will have to sign that says that it is law. This is the process. This is the process that we have to follow when legislation has been enacted. And there is a process as well that's available to members of Congress. Legislation goes up for a 30-day period of review, and members of Congress in either house can introduce disapproval resolutions and ask the chambers, their respective chambers, to vote on those disapproval resolutions. There are other ways that Congress can legislate with regard to the District of Columbia. So there is that process as well. And I say all this because I think there's some folks who feel that there is some intentionality on our part to do something that maybe we don't have a choice to do. the only choice that we have, those of us who are standing here, is to reflect that the initiative was adopted and adopted overwhelmingly, and then proceed as required of us under the Home Rule Act. So again, that's why we are all standing here, because we are all of the same view that this legislation was enacted and the 30-day congressional review period is about to expire. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney General?
Well, since I'm no longer being paid by the word or by the hour, I'll be brief. Every single representation that the mayor has made, and certainly the representations that Council Chairman Mendelson has made, are absolutely accurate and clear. They received advice from their council with respect to Initiative 71. That advice was emphatic that they were proceeding in a lawful manner, and that indeed, as the mayor indicated, Initiative 71 is, in the Attorney General's office view, law. I would add that the council and the mayor and certainly the police chief have acted fully and faithfully in a responsible manner to do what's right, which is to implement the law in a way in which we give guidance to the citizens and residents of the District of Columbia. There's nothing more and there's nothing less. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Let me also acknowledge the council member McDuffie and Silverman and Grasso and Allen and Orange and Bonds and Nadeau. Did I miss anybody? All who have played a role in, of course, oversight of these issues in the district. And I want to thank you for being here and your support. And we'll be available for any questions now. Yes, Tom.
Mayor, what next? Are you going to go to the Hill? Are you going to wait to see what the House committee does? What's next?
Well, what's next is that as the residents of the District of Columbia came out and voted for, the law will go into effect 1 minute after midnight. We will, as we have in these last 8 weeks, continue outreach to members of the Congress. I have had conversations this morning with members of the Congress, as I've had over the last couple of weeks. So this, our position is not news to anybody. We've stated all along that we believe that once the congressional review period was over, that 71 would go into effect, and that as mayor, it was my responsibility to make sure that the implementation was thoughtful and reasonable, and that all of our employees know how to respond, and that's exactly what we've done.
Follow up that question. In those conversations with members of Congress, did any of them say to you directly, as opposed to the letter, that you are violating the law to go forward?
I think that it was expressed, and let's just say this, Tom, that a lot of reasonable people have a different view of this issue. As you've heard, our advice is that 71 was enacted when passed by voters and confirmed by our Board of Elections. Others have a different view, and so we believe that we're acting lawfully. Yes, Sam.
Mayor, how do you react to the talk that you might go to jail? That part of this.
Well, you've heard that we believe that we're acting lawfully. So I have a lot of things to do here in the District of Columbia, and me being in jail wouldn't be a good thing. But making sure that the will of the voters is implemented, and making sure that I'm doing my job and getting the guidance out to the residents, getting guidance out to our agencies about how to enforce the law, that's my job, and that's what I'm doing. Yes, Bruce.
Will you be sending to Congressman Chaffetz the information he requested in his letter?
We're reviewing the congressman's letter, and we intend to be cooperative. I've asked, the Attorney General has certainly already was working on his thoughts around that issue, and we'll look to him for help to be responsive. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, what does this mean for your relationship with Republicans on Capitol Hill, and are you willing to torpedo that relationship over this issue?
I don't don't expect that I'll be looking to torpedo any relationships at the Congress. This is an issue among many issues that we'll have before the Congress, and they have a job to do, and as the chairman noted, they have a lot of remedies before them, and we have a job to do, and we're proceeding with doing our job. Yes.
Yeah, prosecution presented the other one in his office. Have you had any conversations with him or has he staff?
I expect that we're going to have a direct conversation with Mr. Machen's office very soon, in the coming hours. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. We'll go here and then to you.
Similar, have you had any conversations with him? They will leave it up to him.
Well, let me just step back, and because our view is that we haven't had these conversations in isolation, but we have very strong, and we believe that we're on very strong legal ground in where we stand. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Jason Chaffetz did threaten financial retribution against you in the city. What do you think he meant by that, and how do you respond to that directly?
Well, I wouldn't be able to speculate what the chairman meant by that, and I would hope that he's also focused on doing his job. And bullying the District of Columbia is not what his constituents expect, nor do ours. And quite frankly, I think that we're going to continue with our good faith discussions with the chairman around the issues that are important to the district. Now, we do disagree on a matter of law, and we think that there are perfectly reasonable ways to resolve those things without us threatening him nor he us. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, you said that a lot of reasonable people have a different view of this issue. Do you think that the views that were expressed in the letter to you from the two congressmen, that those are widely held in Congress, or is it basically dealing with a small number of people?
Well, I can only say that 2 people signed the letter, and we know already as I was walking down that a number of members of Congress sent out a press release supporting our view. Yes, sir.
By the way, I had a question for you and also Police Chief Lanier. How much training has MPD had on dealing with this new law that goes into effect in 1201? Are the officers in training today? Have they been in training for weeks? Are they all ready to go?
Well, let me start by saying that I'm going to ask the chief to come up, that this is actually an incremental step from where we were with the decriminalization law. So our officers have already had some experience with a changed marijuana law in the district, but I'll ask the chief to add to that.
Yes, the training is underway, but it is just a small incremental step from where we were from decriminalization. So it's not, a major change or a major shift in what the officers do already under decriminalization. So training is underway and will be completed in the coming hours, and this will be enacted in law after 1201.
Do you think, Chief Lanier, are there enough officers going to be fully trained by midnight? I mean, will there be some who may not have the training that's required?
We've been working on this for a while, and again, it's really small changes from decriminalization, so I think our officers are going to be fully prepared for 1201.
Just a few more questions, guys.
Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday you spoke about the need for legislation to clarify criminal laws. Is this confrontation effect on them?
No, we still think it's very important. Again, we're taking a very careful reading of the rider, and there have been a number of things that our government has already done to demonstrate that we want to be in compliance with the rider. And our view is that clarifying that marijuana cannot be used in a private club, basically extending our view of what in public means, helps clarify what the intent of 71. I'll take a couple more here, yes.
In your view, what does the writer force you to do that if the writer had to pass, would? Is rider have no effect on?
The rider prevents us from a reasonable way to regulate the sale of marijuana in the District of Columbia or any other legislation. But the most, I would say, urgent or the most immediate impact is that legislation that was contemplated to regulate the sale of marijuana is prohibited. Yes.
You have the eyes of a lot of folks in the DC industry. A lot of domestics, is there farmers that you want to reach
Well, thank you for that question. And I think that our focus, of course, right now as mayor of a major American city is that we have clear enforceable laws. And so that's our primary focus right now. But for Americans wondering why we're being treated differently than Colorado, differently than Alaska, it demonstrates our relationship with the Congress. Americans might also want their Congress people to be focused on the big issues that are affecting our country. Like, we're very concerned that we have a funded Homeland Security Department. And so we would encourage the Congress to not be so concerned about overturning what 7 out of 10 voters said should be the law in the District of Columbia.
What's the next step as far as legalization? Are you going to try to overturn the riders who operate regulations?
Well, we're focused on this step right now, and I'm sure there'll be conversations among us moving forward.
The letter asks for details on how much money the district has spent to implement the initiative. Do you have any grasp of how much money has been spent thus far on things like printing business cards or other prep work?
Well, any education, it's my view that we're educating people about how to not go afoul of any laws in the District of Columbia. But we don't really think the implementation of 71 has a cost.
Are you going to be up at 12:01 tonight?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be up at 12:01 tonight?
No, absolutely not. Thank you, everybody.